He refused to pay for hazmat removal. So I made him regret it. Petty revenge. Started with a smell. Not a bad one exactly, more earthy, damp, like walking into an old basement after a rainstorm. Unit 3B at the Willow Creek Apartments. One of Harding's prized properties, if you could call a building with peeling paint and a perpetually clogged drain pipe prized. I was Liam, Harding's go-to guy for, well, everything. Property management, glorified babysitting, and damage control. I thought I was getting good at it, honestly. Efficient, organized, able to handle anything Rich Harding threw my way. I was wrong. The tenants in 3B had just moved out. Evicted, actually. Another Harding special: jack up the rent, force out the long-term residents, and then slap a fresh coat of paint on the place for a quick turnaround. Sleazy, but profitable. I was doing the routine walk-through, clipboard in hand, marking down the usual damages: nail holes, scuffed baseboards, a suspiciously sticky residue on the kitchen counter. Standard stuff. Then I noticed it, the smell. I traced it to the back bedroom, the one with the north-facing wall perpetually shaded and damp. Behind the peeling wallpaper, a dark, fuzzy bloom was spreading. Black mold, and not just a little bit. We were talking full-blown infestation. I snapped a few pictures with my phone. The flash revealed the true horror of it. It was growing up the wall, behind the baseboards, probably even into the insulation. This wasn't a wipe-it-down with bleach situation. This was hazmat territory. I felt a knot form in my stomach. This was bad, really bad. I drafted an email to Harding attaching the photos and outlining the situation. Recommend immediate professional hazmat removal. I wrote, tenant safety is a priority. His reply came within minutes. All caps, short and to the point. No hazmat, too expensive. Paint IT, rent IT. I stared at the email, my blood pressure rising. This was exactly the kind of crap I'd come to expect from him. He saw dollar signs, not people. I forwarded the email to Sarah Miller, my coworker and unofficial mentor. She'd been at Harding Properties for years and knew Rich's playbook better than anyone. Her reply was equally succinct: document everything. Saya, cover your ass. The mantra of anyone working for Rich Harding. So I did. I printed the email, filed it away, and then drafted a more detailed report outlining the potential health risks of mold exposure, citing reputable sources from the EPA and the CDC. I addressed it to Harding, hand-delivered it, and kept a copy for myself. Then, with a heavy heart, I did as I was told. I bought a gallon of Kills primer and a bucket of off-white paint. I masked off the area, slapped on 2 coats of primer, and then 2 coats of paint. It looked passable, at least to the untrained eye. The smell was still there, faintly, but I figured a few air fresheners would cover it up. I hated myself a little bit. A week later, the unit was rented. A young couple, the Smiths, early 20s, bright-eyed and excited to start their life together. They loved the apartment. It's so cozy, the girl, Emily, said to me. And the rent is so reasonable, I forced a smile. Reasonable rent for a potential health hazard. I went home that night and tossed and turned. The image of Emily Smith's smiling face burned into my brain. I was complicit in this. I'd helped Rich Harding put profit over people. A few weeks passed. I tried to put the whole thing out of my mind. Focus on the other properties, the other tenants, the endless stream of paperwork. But the guilt gnawed at me. Then I got a call. Mrs. Davies, an elderly woman who lived next door to the Smiths. She'd been a tenant in the building for over 30 years. A sweet, slightly frail woman who always had a kind word for everyone. Liam, dear, she said, her voice raspy. I don't want to cause any trouble, but I've been feeling quite poorly lately. A terrible cough and my chest feels so tight. And there's this strange smell coming from next door. My heart sank. I promised her I'd look into it. The next day, I found an excuse to visit the Smiths. I told them I was doing a routine maintenance check, something about the plumbing. Emily let me in, her face a little pale. We've been having some trouble sleeping, she said, rubbing her eyes, and I've been feeling kind of congested. Is there something wrong with the air in here? I walked into the back bedroom. The paint looked fine, but the smell was unmistakable, stronger than before, mustier. And I could see it now, faintly, a dark discoloration seeping through the paint in the corner of the wall. The mold was back, and it was thriving. I excused myself, promising to look into it. Back in my car, I called Bob, a guy I knew from a hazmat removal company. He'd done work for Harding Properties before, mostly illegal asbestos abatement. I figured he wouldn't be surprised by anything. Bob, I said, I need a quote. Black mold. Significant infestation. Apartment building on Elm Street. He sighed. Harding, huh, what a surprise. He came out that afternoon, dressed in a full hazmat suit, looking like he was ready to enter a nuclear reactor. He took some air samples, scraped some mold off the wall, and shook his head. "This is bad, Liam," he said. "Real bad. This stuff has been growing for a while. It's not just on the surface. It's in the walls, in the insulation, probably in the ventilation system. You need to gut this whole room, maybe even the whole apartment." He gave me a quote, a hefty one, several $1,000s. I went back to Harding's office, the quote in hand. I laid it on his desk. "Rich," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "we have a problem. The mold is back in 3B. It's worse than before. We need to do something about it. The Smiths are getting sick, Mrs. Davies is getting sick. This is a liability nightmare waiting to happen." He didn't even look at the quote. He just glared at me. "I told you to paint it, Liam," he said, his voice cold. "I didn't tell you to spend thousands of dollars on some fancy mold removal. You're wasting my time and my money." "But Rich, this is a safety issue," I protested. "We have a responsibility to our tenants." "Our responsibility is to make money," he snapped. "And you're not doing a very good job of it right now. I'm paying you to manage these properties, not to bleed them dry. Now get back to work and stop bothering me with this nonsense." He turned his back to me, dismissing me like I was a fly buzzing around his head. I stood there for a moment, my fists clenched, trying to control my anger. This was it, the breaking point. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't work for a man who cared more about money than about people's lives. I walked out of his office, went back to my desk, and started looking for a new job. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the Smiths, about Mrs. Davies, about all the other tenants in the building who might be exposed to the mold. I had to do something. The next day, I went to the local council. I spoke to an inspector, a man named Davies. I explained the situation, showed him the photos, and presented him with the report I'd written for Harding. He listened patiently, his expression growing more and more concerned. "This is a serious matter, Mr. Hayes," he said. "Mold infestations can have significant health consequences. We'll need to investigate this immediately." He scheduled an inspection for the following week. I also reached out to the Smiths. I told them everything. About the mold, about Harding's refusal to address it, about the potential health risks. I apologized for not being more upfront with them when they first moved in. They were understandably upset, angry even, but they were also grateful for the information. They said they were going to see a doctor and get tested for mold exposure. I knew I was risking my job, but I didn't care anymore. I had to do what was right. The day of the council inspection arrived. Inspector Davies showed up with a team of specialists. They spent hours in the apartment, taking air samples, inspecting the walls, and documenting the extent of the contamination. Harding was furious. He stormed around the apartment, yelling at the inspector, accusing me of sabotage. The inspector ignored him. When he was finished, he turned to Harding, his face grim. "Mr. Harding," he said, "I'm issuing an immediate notice of violation. This apartment is uninhabitable. You need to have it professionally remediate within the next 30 days. If you fail to comply, you will be subject to significant fines and potential legal action." Harding's face turned purple. He sputtered and stammered, but the inspector was unmoved. As the inspector left, Harding turned to me, his eyes blazing with rage. "You're fired, Hayes," he screamed. "You're a traitor, you're nothing but a troublemaker." "Fine," I said. "I quit anyway." I walked out of the apartment, leaving Harding to stew in his own anger and negligence. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I'd done the right thing. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Harding, forced to comply with the council's order, hired a HAZMAT removal company. He tried to go with the cheapest option, but I made sure that didn't happen. I anonymously contacted the HAZMAT crew and told them about Harding's history of cutting corners and his disregard for safety. I emphasized the potential health risks and urged them to follow all safety protocols to the letter. They did. They wore full hazmat suits, sealed off the apartment, and used specialized equipment to remove the mold. The process took days and cost Harding a fortune. Meanwhile, the Smiths, armed with the test results from their doctor, hired a lawyer and started preparing a lawsuit against Harding. And Mrs. Davies, along with several other tenants in the building, joined the lawsuit. They were tired of Harding's neglect and his blatant disregard for their well-being. Harding tried to intimidate me into silence. He sent his lawyer to my new job, threatening to sue me for defamation and breach of contract. But I wasn't scared. I had proof of everything. The emails, the reports, the photographs. I had the council inspector's report, the Smiths' medical records, the tenants' testimonies. Harding's attempts to bully me backfired. The media got wind of the story, and soon Harding Properties was the target of a full-blown public relations disaster. The local news ran a series of reports about the mold infestation, interviewing the Smiths, Mrs. Davies, and several other tenants. They showed pictures of the mold, the peeling paint, and the crumbling infrastructure of the building. Harding's reputation was in tatters. His business started to suffer. Tenants moved out, investors pulled out, and his properties sat vacant. The lawsuit dragged on for months, but eventually, Harding settled. He paid a significant amount of money to the tenants to compensate them for their health problems and their diminished quality of life. He was also fined heavily by the local council for violating building codes and endangering public health. As for me, I found a new job at a reputable property management company. They valued my honesty, my integrity, and my commitment to tenant safety. I learned a valuable lesson from my experience with Rich Harding. Sometimes, doing the right thing comes at a cost, but it's always worth it. And sometimes, the pettiest revenge is simply watching someone else reap what they've sown. Watching their carefully constructed empire crumble under the weight of their own greed and negligence. Watching them finally face the consequences of their actions. It wasn't about the money, or the lawsuits, or the media attention. It was about justice. It was about protecting the vulnerable. It was about standing up to a bully. And in the end, that was the most satisfying revenge of all. The earth smell lingered though, not just in the building, but in my memory, a reminder of what I did and what I would never do again.